Kelly Cadell, and I'm still in the process of learning more about blockchain technology, thanks to Jonathan.
Hi, I am Jonathan Baha'i. I have been in the blockchain sector since 2014, so I know a little bit about it. And I am going to be here today to talk about concepts on blockchain, to give you bits and pieces that'll make it easier for you to digest.
So you'd mentioned in one of our previous episodes that only public blockchains can be accessed by anyone.
That's right. As a matter of fact, believe it or not all blockchains are actually public.
What other types of blockchains are there?
Generally speaking, a lot of people will break down blockchains into three categories.
Okay.
So there is public,
Yep.
private, and what's called consortium. Okay? So in public blockchain, what happens is that everybody has free access to it. So you can be able to connect to the blockchain and be able to become a validating node. You can be able to see all the transactions that happen in it. You'll be able to be a miner if you wanted to, like we talked about before. So public blockchains are just free and open to any person in the world to be able to participate. The most popular ones that are an example of this are Ethereum or Bitcoin, as we've talked about a lot.
Yes.
So second to that, that's public. Private, however, is where the blockchain is completely restricted. So it's mostly based on the permissions and how the blockchain operates. So in a private blockchain, essentially, not just anybody can become a node in that blockchain. Not everyone can be able to view that information. Not everyone can validate the transactions. Not everyone can be able to participate in even transacting on the blockchain. So it's just completely restricted and private. And with all of that, a lot of people don't necessarily consider private blockchains to even be real blockchains in some cases.
Can it be called a blockchain if the records aren't public?
It's hard to say because the problem is the features I just talked about now are what make up a private blockchain. So what happens is that you essentially have so the beauty of blockchain really is in the decentralization, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the ability to have like all these various people who are operating in it to be able to validate and make sure that this is all true.
Right.
But then when you have just one single entity that controls the whole thing, they can do anything they want with it, right? So they can be able to if you want to be able to know that a transaction happened the way it was supposed to, you can't, right? They're restricting access to it.
Yeah.
If you want to be able to participate in the blockchain to make sure that the validation process that's supposed to be happening is correct, you can't, right? So if you can't be able to participate in these, then, is it really a blockchain? On the other hand, there's some benefits to the businesses that use it, right? Private blockchains are popular for businesses primarily because it allows them to be able to add a layer of security to their processes. They can do some things cheaper, more efficiently. So it gives them these things in terms of how they operate their business. But from a blockchain perspective, in terms of it being a real blockchain,
right,
it's really hard to tell because at the end of the day, when you take away the decentralization, what do you really have except like kind of a funky database, right?
Where all can you apply a private blockchain at?
Private blockchains are really popular with businesses.
Yep.
In terms of being able to reduce the cost of their transactions, being able to add more security to the way that their networks operate, right? So for businesses, those are ways that they'll use private blockchains. Governments will use private blockchains primarily in military in order to apply that to where they need higher security, right? So those are some examples of where a private blockchain makes sense.
IBM has a blockchain, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, the blockchain that they primarily are behind is called Hyperledger.
Okay.
So there is a couple of different private blockchains that are out there. One of them is Hyperledger. There's a few others, not really worth mentioning.
Okay.
But so IBM has a blockchain. Walmart has developed their own private blockchain. Amazon has developed their own private blockchain. Everybody is getting on the we're going to have a blockchain bandwagon, right? So they all do it for various use cases. In some cases, like for example, Walmart, I mentioned supply chain.
Right.
So Walmart has massive supply chain situation, and they were very famously showcased as we created a blockchain and look at all the wonderful benefits we've had from doing it. And so they're a very popular example.
And then there's the third category of the blockchain. What is that again?
Consortium?
Right.
Yeah, consortiums are interesting. They're sometimes called federated blockchains, so consortium or federation. So in that kind of situation, it's interesting. It's a little bit of both, right? So in a consortium situation, generally speaking, the public can access the blockchain to use it, but what happens is there's a group of predefined, preset nodes, which are decided amongst whomever. So let's say, for example, a bank or a series of banks want to get together and they want to create a consortium blockchain. So what they'll do is they'll get together and hopefully every single bank has the same say in that blockchain. And so they will each be the node operators. However, not everybody can become a node operator in that kind of situation. But sometimes, depending on what the consortium decides, they'll allow for validation from the public. They'll allow for certain permission. With permission, they can allow for the public to utilize certain features. So it all depends on what the consortium decides. Again, that's the private part of it, on how much is going to be accessible to the public.
Okay.
And it gives a little bit of decentralization because what happened? Well, I wouldn't say a little bit. I would say it's more structured. Okay, so you have that layer of multiple parties, and so what happens in that kind of scenario is that usually those parties have entered into agreements. No one party, so in that case, usually it uses a consensus mechanism, probably DPoS, where there has to be a consensus amongst all these different parties in order for the transactions to be validated, right? And in that kind of situation, you have a good degree of decentralization. The only downside is that it's not open, and it's all controlled by this consortium. So there's nothing anybody can ever do about, like if it goes a certain way, there's nothing anybody can do anything about if something goes wrong, right? So consortiums have their own place. It's certainly something that banks would go with. So a few examples of consortium blockchains is the Energy Web Foundation. All right, so for the energy sector, they've all gotten together to create a blockchain. That's a consortium web blockchain for the regulatory sector for energy. The B3I project for the insurance industry has done that. And there's also BankChain, which I guess it has something to do with banks.
So this is all completely new information to me. I was under the impression that all blockchains were decentralized.
Yeah, they're not. Surprisingly so, but they are not all decentralized. They are not all decentralized. There are public, private, and consortium.
Wow, I'm glad you cleared that up for me and busted that myth. And thanks for explaining all the different types of blockchain. Getting the hang of it slowly.
You're doing good.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions about blockchain, Jonathan's your guy to ask, so leave your comments in the comment section below.
And don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell to make sure that you don't miss out on any more episodes of Coin Frenzy Bunker. Till then, we'll see you at the next one.